What if the real secret to living well isn't grinding harder, but, well, doing nothing? I know, sounds ridiculous, right? We've been trained to think doing nothing is basically a crime against ambition. Our days are crammed with meetings, errands, deadlines. Our phones never shut up. And somewhere along the way, we started treating exhaustion like a weird badge of honor, as if the more worn out you are, the more worthy you must be. Free time? That's just an excuse to either catch up on work or binge something on Netflix while scrolling TikTok at the same time. But what if, hear me out, all this frantic busyness isn't proof we're living the good life, but proof we're running in circles? Over 2,000 years ago, Aristotle, yes, that Aristotle, the one whose ideas basically wormed their way into everything from politics to science, dropped what still feels like a mic drop level truth bomb. The whole point of all our hustle and striving shouldn't be more hustle. It should be leisure. And no, he didn't mean kick back with chips and watch 5 hours of reality TV kind of leisure. That's not what he was on about. For him, leisure was deeper, almost sacred. The place where we actually get to be fully human, not just cogs in some giant productivity machine. That's what I want to unpack here. What Aristotle actually meant by doing nothing, why he thought it was the key to flourishing, and how his thoughts still manage to call us out today. Along the way, we'll peek at thinkers like Karl Marx and Herbert Marcuse, because apparently questioning our obsession with work is a time-honored tradition, and see why this ancient idea might be the antidote to our burnout epidemic. When you hear leisure today, you probably think about what's left over when work is done, the crumbs of time you scrape together for hobbies, Netflix, or doom scrolling. But Aristotle, he'd say we're missing the point entirely. For him, leisure, scholeÄ in Greek, wasn't about killing time. It was about creating space for something richer. And to understand that, you've got to know his core obsession. What's the purpose of life? His answer, eudaimonia. It's often lazily translated as happiness, but that word's too flimsy. This wasn't about fleeting joy or mood swings. Eudaimonia was about flourishing, becoming the best version of yourself over a lifetime. It meant living with virtue, using reason, and fully realizing your human potential. And leisure? That was how you actually got there. Aristotle saw life as a mix of activities. First, the stuff you do to survive, working to earn food, money, shelter. Then, the amusements that help you recharge so you can go back to surviving. But then there's this rare third category. Things you do purely for their own sake. Not for money. Not for status. Not even for relaxation. Just because they are worth doing. That's leisure. And honestly, that's the part we've almost forgotten how to do. Leisure, in Aristotle's sense, isn't about sitting around doing nothing. It's not laziness. It's not killing time. It's about doing things that matter for their own sake, things that are worth doing even if they don't earn you a dime or get you ahead. For him, the highest of these was contemplation, chasing truth for the sheer thrill of it. It could be philosophy, math, science, or just sitting there getting lost in a piece of music or art. These were activities for the mind, our best, most distinctly human part. Take a second to hit that subscribe button and when you're contemplating, you're not angling for a promotion, not trying to impress anyone, not even relaxing in the way we usually mean it. You're thinking just to think. It's kind of like this. You might slog through a job all day because you've got bills to pay, survival. Then after work, maybe you watch a silly movie to switch your brain off, amusement. But then, and this is where Aristotle starts grinning, maybe you pick up a book on ancient history or black holes just because you're curious. Not for work, not for school, just because your brain is hungry. That's real leisure. That's when, in Aristotle's eyes, you're most fully yourself. He thought this wasn't just nice to have, it was essential. A life built only on work and distraction, that's a life for beasts, not humans. Without leisure, there's no stepping back to ask the big questions. What makes life good? What's justice? Why is beauty beautiful? It's in these unhurried moments that we grow virtues like wisdom, courage, and justice, the stuff you actually need for a flourishing life. Which means, for Aristotle, work isn't the point. Work exists so we can have leisure. Aristotle wasn't just a think about your life guy. He was also knee-deep in political theory. He believed a good state should make it possible for its citizens to live well, and that meant they needed real leisure. In politics, he lays out this ideal state. In it, citizens wouldn't be grinding away at the basics, farming, crafting, selling goods in the marketplace. Not because those jobs weren't valuable, but because Aristotle thought they were exhausting and left no space for the mind's higher pursuits. So who would do them? And here's where things get uncomfortable. In his world, it was slaves. He called them living tools, born for physical work, in his view, incapable of reason. This way, the true citizens, wealthy, property-owning men, could spend their days in politics, art, and philosophy. Yeah, not exactly a view that holds up today. His justification for slavery is, frankly, indefensible. But if you zoom out past that ugly piece, there's still an underlying point he was trying to make. People can't really be free if they're trapped in the grind of survival. If your mind is constantly calculating how to pay rent or where dinner's coming from, you're not free. You're chained, not by a master, but by necessity itself. For Aristotle, real freedom wasn't just about not having a tyrant breathing down your neck. It was about having the time and space to grow, think, and live fully. And leisure? That was the door to that kind of freedom. In Aristotle's dream state, leisure wasn't some personal indulgence you squeezed in between Netflix episodes. It wasn't me time in the modern spa day sense. It was serious business, almost a civic duty. If you were a citizen, your free hours weren't meant for puttering around aimlessly. They were for sharpening your mind and your character. You'd spend that time debating philosophy with your peers, wrestling with questions of justice and the common good. You'd engage in politics, not the mudslinging spectacle we see now, but the thoughtful kind, the kind that required real phronesis, practical wisdom. You'd study art and music, not just because they were pretty or pleasant, but because they shaped your soul. They taught you to recognize beauty, and beauty for Aristotle was moral training. Leisure, in this sense, was like a workshop for building good citizens. It took you beyond your own little bubble of self-interest and plugged you into something bigger, the life of the community. It was freedom in the truest sense, because it pulled you out of survival mode and gave you space to ask the universal questions. And in Aristotle's mind, the ultimate job of the state wasn't just to keep you safe or make you rich, it was to make you virtuous. And virtue? That only grew in the rich, slow soil of leisure. Aristotle's thoughts didn't vanish into the dust of old scrolls. They kept bouncing around in Western thought for centuries, occasionally bumping into the ideas of later troublemakers like Karl Marx and Herbert Marcuse, both of whom had a lot to say about work, freedom, and what it means to actually live. Marx, writing during the Industrial Revolution, wasn't exactly subtle about how he felt. Like Aristotle, he saw life split into two realms: the realm of necessity, work, survival, doing what you have to, and the realm of freedom, the life you actually want to live once the chores are done. The problem, he thought, was that capitalism had locked most people in the realm of necessity and thrown away the key. For the working class, labor wasn't a joyful, creative act. It was a slow bleed of energy and spirit. You didn't own what you made. You didn't control how you made it. You barely connected with the people you worked alongside. Worst of all, you lost touch with yourself, your own human nature. You worked for wages, not for meaning. His alternative? A communist society where tech and productivity had advanced so far that the grind was dramatically reduced for everyone. And in that extra time, that massive expansion of the realm of freedom, people could live whole, varied lives. His famous day-in-the-life fantasy went something like hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, herd cattle in the evening, critique philosophy after dinner, all without ever being stuck as just a hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. The point? You'd be free to explore every side of yourself without being boxed in by the endless, numbing loop of specialized labor. Marx and Aristotle lived in completely different worlds, different economies, different politics, different everything. And yet, weirdly, they'd probably nod along to some of the same points. Both saw the grind of necessary labor as a kind of cage. Both thought the real meaning of life wasn't in just keeping yourself alive, but in doing things for their own sake, the kind of activities that make you feel more human, not less. The big split? Aristotle only wanted that freedom for a select few, the elite, living comfortably while others, slaves in his world, did the heavy lifting. Marx, on the other hand, wanted it for everyone, and his plan didn't rely on human subjugation, but on machines and technology doing the grunt work, so people could finally be free to live. Fast forward about 100 years after Marx, and we meet Herbert Marcuse. Now he's looking at the modern industrialized world, capitalist and communist alike, and he's not impressed. In fact, his take is almost paranoid, but in a way that's hard to shake. Marcuse, part of the Frankfurt School, had this idea of the one-dimensional man. We think we're free, but we're not. Modern society, with its mass media, advertising, and endless products, has found a sneakier way to keep us in line. Sure, we might not be chained to a factory floor 24/7, but we still work alienating jobs all week. Then, when we finally get free time, what happens? We're spoon-fed a sanitized, market-approved version of fun. This is the leisure industry. And once you start noticing it, you can't unsee it. Instead of exploring, thinking, creating, we sit back and let the machine entertain us. We all watch the same blockbusters, stream the same playlists, buy the same gadgets. Marcuse argued that this isn't freedom at all. It's just a softer form of servitude. It keeps us docile, distracts us from how empty our work feels, and convinces us to stop asking difficult questions. He called it happy consciousness, that eerie, smiling complacency that doesn't even realize it's trapped. Through Marcuse's lens, what we call leisure today is almost the opposite of Aristotle's vision. Aristotle's leisure was active, demanding, and brain-stretching. It was about becoming sharper, more thoughtful, more human. Marcuse's modern leisure is passive, prepackaged, and designed to help you switch off your mind. Not freedom, sedation. Which brings us to now. Our phones buzzing in our pockets, our streaming queues longer than our reading lists. Aristotle couldn't have imagined a world like this, but his ideas still sting. They ask an uncomfortable question. What are we actually doing with our free time? Because if you look at the numbers, we technically have more of it than ever before in human history. But does it feel that way? And more importantly, what do we fill it with? Are we using it to learn, create, connect, grow? Or are we just scrolling, clicking, and watching until it's time to sleep and start over? Aristotle drew a clear line between amusement and leisure, and honestly, it's a line worth keeping in mind. Amusement's not evil. We all need to switch off sometimes. The danger is when our whole life becomes just work, and then recovery from work. In that loop, there's no room for the thing that makes us distinctly human, the act of thinking, not because we have to, but because we want to. Second, and this one hits hard, Aristotle's ideas take a sledgehammer to our modern hustle culture, the one that whispers or shouts that you're only worth as much as you produce. We live in a time where the busier you are, the more respectable you seem. People brag about their packed calendars like it's a personality trait. And the idea of spending an afternoon reading philosophy or learning to play the guitar just because it's beautiful, that can feel almost irresponsible. But Aristotle flips that thinking on its head. These useless activities, they're the most useful of all, because they're what actually feed your soul. They make you more alive, more yourself. Of course, there's the uncomfortable question no one likes to linger on. Can we actually make true leisure possible today without leaning on someone else's exploitation? Aristotle's perfect city rested on slavery. Marx's dream banked on technology doing most of the heavy lifting. A level of tech we still don't have. And the reality? For a huge chunk of the planet, the realm of necessity swallows every waking hour. It's a privilege just to have the energy to even think about Aristotle. Maybe that's the real work for us now, to democratize leisure. That could mean pushing for a shorter work week, or a universal basic income, or better funding for schools, libraries, parks, the arts, all those public goods that free up headspace for more than just survival. But it's also not just someone else's job. It's a personal choice, and it's rarely convenient. It means deciding, deliberately, to make room for true leisure in your own life. Shutting the laptop, silencing the phone, sitting with something that challenges you, moves you, pulls you out of the noise. Something done for no other reason than the fact that it's worth doing. Aristotle's idea of leisure isn't some dusty relic from a time before TikTok. It's still alive, And it's still quietly daring us to rethink what all this striving is for. He's basically asking, are you trying to have more or to be more? Because the ultimate freedom isn't the freedom to fill your cart with more stuff. It's the freedom to become the fullest version of yourself. And that doesn't happen in the middle of a frantic to-do list. It happens in the quiet, in the slow burn of learning something hard, in the pause to take in a piece of music or art, in the rare, uncluttered moments when you just think. That's the art of doing nothing. Not nothing in the lazy sense. Nothing except the most important thing you can do, tending to the human soul. If any part of this resonated with you, share it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this journey of reflection, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Watch the next video.